The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
It's Saturday the 7th of September. I'm Ciara Evans, and this was a week that saw the Grenfell Inquiry publish its report, Labour under pressure over winter fuel cuts, Russia batter Ukraine with missile strikes, and Sir Ian McKellen bounced back after a stage dive.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
The deaths that occurred were all avoidable, and those who lived in the tower were badly failed over a number of years by those who were responsible for ensuring the safety of the building.
That was Sir Martin Moore-Bick, who led the 7-year inquiry into the Grenfell fire that killed 72 people. His report blamed decades of failure by central government and pointed the finger of blame at several multinational construction companies who he said made the combustible materials that contributed to the tragedy and misled the market. Prime Minister Keir Starmer issued an apology for an incident he said should never have happened.
I want to start with an apology on behalf of the British state to each and every one of you, and indeed to all of the families affected by this tragedy.
There have been no charges or prosecutions of anyone involved, and London Mayor Sadiq Khan was among those urging the Crown Prosecution Service to take action. The chair of the Grenfell United Group, Natasha Elcock, says the government needs to move quickly.
This country has been failed by governments of all political persuasions. Our expectation is your government will break old habits and implement all the recommendations made by Sir Martin Moore-Bick's report.
After the publication of the Grenfell Inquiry report on Wednesday, there's been growing pressure for justice to take its course for those responsible for the death of 72 people in the blaze that swept through the London Tower. However, a former director of public prosecutions, Lord MacDonald, was warning that it could still take years before charges are brought and that any trials might not take place until 2029. The Met Police says it needs at least 18 months to finish compiling the evidence, while the 3 largest companies accused of systematic dishonesty have said they do not accept the findings of the inquiry. Deputy PM and Secretary of State for Housing and Communities, Angela Rayner, says successive governments have gotten their priorities wrong.
Greed and deregulation had been put before safety, and that's what needs to change, is that actually the number one priority of any government is to keep its citizens safe, and this is part of that process.
Housing Ombudsman Richard Blakeway says there is a class divide baked into the social housing system.
Systems and processes can be kind of callous and uncaring. And you can see how the system pressures are kind of creating a kind of second-class citizen attitude towards social tenants.
It's September, the summer holidays are over and MPs are back in the House of Commons. Monday saw news that the controversial one-word judgments of schools is to come to an end, according to Labour's Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. The rankings, which go from outstanding to good to requires improvement to inadequate, have proved highly controversial and added huge pressure to schools, including in 2023 when head teacher Ruth Perry took her own life when she found out her school was due to be judged inadequate. The Education Secretary says it's time for change.
Today we are announcing with immediate effect that where it comes to schools, those one-word judgments will be at an end. We will bring forward a new system of report cards that will better capture a school's strengths but also areas for improvement.
The new policies will see a report card system introduced, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer was in a London school on Monday for the announcement. He says the government's focus is on improving standards in education.
I don't accept that the parents will be confused. And I have to say, from our point of view, the sort of single grade didn't work very well. I think a lot of parents will be really relieved to know it's going to be a richer picture, more accountability, and that you've got a government that's absolutely determined to drive up standards.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves was back in the spotlight on Tuesday. She took the podium in the Commons to answer questions on the forthcoming budget and the warning last week from Prime Minister Keir Starmer that a new round of austerity is on the way. The cut in winter fuel allowance has continued to generate heat for the Chancellor, with the Lib Dems planning to push a vote on the measure this week. Reeves said the issue is largely down to the Tories.
We inherited a £22 billion black hole from the previous government. When I became Chancellor, I undertook an immediate audit of the spending situation to understand the scale of that challenge, and I made difficult decisions to put the public finances on a sustainable footing.
Former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has continued to push back on that claim, but the head of the Civil Service, Simon Case, was backing Reeves and pointing the finger at the Tories' failure to carry out proper spending reviews. Meanwhile, in the Commons, Shadow Chief Secretary of the Treasury, Laura Trott, had been digging through the archives to put pressure on Rachel Reeves.
10 years ago, the now Chancellor argued that winter fuel payments should be means tested and cut for the richest pensioners. She's proposed removing winter fuel payments from pensioners on just £13,000 a year. Does she still think that a pensioner on £13,000 a year is rich?
The plan to cut the winter fuel allowance also took centre stage during the first Prime Minister's question time of Parliament's new term. The Tories have been pushing hard on the topic, despite the fact they proposed it back in 2017 as part of their manifesto, although they did later drop it. Temporary Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak, wanted to know what the new Labour government's priorities are.
So can the Prime Minister explain to Britain's low-income pensioners why he has taken money away from them whilst at the same time given more money to highly paid train drivers?
Apart from inadvertently referring to Rishi as the Prime Minister, Starmer pushed back, saying that there won't be any growth in the economy if the trains aren't running or the NHS is on strike. And he returned to the fact that the cuts that are coming are because of poor management of the economy by the Tories.
We've had to take tough decisions to stabilise the economy and repair the damage, including targeting winter fuel payments whilst protecting pensioners.
Fans of Tory leadership contests will be relieved to hear that there are still almost 2 months left before a new leader is selected. That means when Rachel Reeves announces the budget at the end of October, it'll still be Rishi Sunak in the leader of the opposition chair. There was at least some progress on Wednesday as MPs voted to eliminate one of the 6 candidates from Badenoch, Patel, Cleverly, Tugendhat, Stride and Jenrick. They'd scheduled to vote again next week to select a final 4 for the Tory party conference. Bob Blackman, the new chair of the 1922 committee, broke the news to Priti Patel.
As a result of the ballot, Priti Patel is eliminated from the contest, and there'll be a further ballot next Tuesday to reduce the list from 5 to 4 candidates.
A Russian strike on Kharkiv on Sunday wounded at least 47 people and caused widespread damage across Ukraine's second largest city, destroying a shopping centre, a post office and a sports complex. Earlier on Sunday, Moscow claimed to have thwarted one of the largest Ukrainian drone attacks on its territory since the war began, saying it shot down more than 150 drones across 15 regions, although both an oil refinery and thermal power station near Moscow appeared to be on fire. It capped off a dramatic weekend during which Ukrainian President Zelensky sacked Air Force Commander Mykola Oleshuk over the alleged self-destruction of a donated F-16 fighter jet. Zelensky says the Russian attacks on civilians cannot continue.
Each strike on Kharkiv and other cities and villages proves the correctness of our tactics, particularly in the Kursk. We must push the war back from where it was brought to Ukraine, and not just into Russia's border regions. The terrorist state must feel what war is.
However, Russia continued its devastating waves of attacks across the week, including on Tuesday a strike on the city of Poltava, as what appeared to be 2 Iskander missiles hit what Ukrainian sources were calling an education facility and a hospital. At least 51 people were killed and more than 200 injured, as it appeared Russia had targeted a military training site, and the Ukrainian authorities have confirmed that service members were amongst those killed. President Zelensky had strong words for those behind the attack.
The Russian scum will undoubtedly be held accountable for this strike. And once again, we urge everyone in the world who has the power to stop this terror. Air defense systems and missiles are needed in Ukraine.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba spoke to CNN's Christine Amanpour in Kyiv, and he says it's extremely urgent that Ukraine's Western allies deliver the air defense systems and weaponry that they have pledged as soon as possible.
I don't know how many more tragedies like this have to occur for all promises to be fulfilled and for all new commitments to be made.
That was Kulba's last appearance as foreign minister, as Ukrainian President Zelensky announced a major cabinet reshuffle on Thursday. He says his government needs new energy, so he's appointed 8 new ministers, including a new Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiha. He replaced the popular Dmitry Kulba, who was well liked by Ukraine's international allies, and there have been some concerns expressed about the scale of the changes at a critical junction in the war. Zelensky is due to travel to the US to present his victory plan to President Joe Biden, and he spoke to NBC on Thursday to explain the strategy behind Ukraine's Kursk incursion.
The lack of long-range capability made us think, every second, about what alternatives we had, and this led to the operation in Russia's Kursk region, which was a successful operation, by the way.
Even if the operation in Kursk is successful, Russia's reaction to it has been bruising, with increasing missile attacks across Ukraine and a determined push in the Donbass. Dmitry Peskov, President Putin's spokesman, said Russia won't be stopping anytime soon.
Putin has repeatedly emphasized that we are ready to resolve the conflict by political and diplomatic means. The West and Ukraine rejected any proposals of dialogue, so for us, the main thing is to achieve the goals we have in front of us.
It was another week with no progress towards a ceasefire in Gaza, despite a wave of protests across Israel. On Sunday, the Israeli military announced that it had recovered the bodies of 6 hostages apparently killed by Hamas in Gaza. All 6 had been taken in the October 7th attack last year, and it's believed they were killed just before their bodies were discovered. It led to widespread protests, with tens of thousands gathering in Tel Aviv and across Israel, accusing Prime Minister Netanyahu of being too slow to secure a hostage deal with Hamas. The powerful Histadrut union has announced a general strike today in support of the protests, but Netanyahu said he was devastated by the news of the deaths.
This is a difficult day for us. The entire nation is heartbroken. Together with all citizens of Israel, I was outraged to the depths of my soul by the horrific, cold-blooded murder of 6 of our hostages.
Meanwhile, Jonathan Dekelchen, whose son Sagi is among the roughly 100 hostages still in Gaza, said he's worried about what's next.
Any narrative that expresses in any way that the hostages are not in danger is absolutely disproved by the proof that more and more hostages are being recovered by the Israeli army, who have been murdered over the course of the last weeks and months in Gaza, which, of course, for all of the 101 remaining hostages and their families, is just absolutely horrific news.
Monday saw more protests and the beginnings of a national strike, although the Tel Aviv Labour Court eventually ordered the strike to be called off, ruling it was politically motivated. Israeli PM Netanyahu held a rare press conference answering questions from the media and asking for forgiveness for failing to bring home the 6 hostages alive. International pressure continues to mount as Joe Biden said the Israeli PM is not doing enough to get a ceasefire deal agreed, and the UK's Foreign Secretary David Lammy addressed the comments to announce a halt to some arms sales to Israel. Labour sources were quick to reject the notion that this demonstrated the government believed Israel had committed war crimes, but the Foreign Secretary said the review of export licences was required.
The assessment I have received leaves me unable to conclude anything other than that for certain UK arms exports to Israel, there does exist a clear risk that might be used to commit a serious violation of international humanitarian law.
The World Health Organization continued its emergency polio vaccination campaign in Gaza on Tuesday, taking advantage of pauses in the fighting to administer over 161,000 doses of the life-saving vaccine in just 2 days. There was no progress, though, on ceasefire talks as the US announced charges against 6 senior members of Hamas for the events of October 7th, including terrorism and the murder of Americans. The Israeli Prime Minister was harshly critical of the UK government's decision to suspend around 10% of arms export licences to Israel, describing the decision as shameful. But Defence Minister John Healey says the decision was based on analysis by the ministry and it's a move the government considered carefully.
Well, this is not about making a political gesture. We saw too much of that under the last government. This is about following the rule of law, and this is a government that will respect the law. But the only way to end the attacks from Hamas and from others is for an immediate ceasefire.
Still to come in the Standout 7, America accuses Russia of election interference and Ian McKellen brings the drama.
Right after this.
It can be hard balancing taking care of kids, senior loved ones, and yourself. Remember, it's okay to ask for help. There's a reason 29 million families have turned to Care.com. Find background-checked sitters, nannies, and senior caregivers who can help with everything from watching kids after school to senior meal prep. Whether you need full-time, part-time, or even occasional help, you can view rates and book highly rated caregivers that fit your budget and schedule. Get the help you need with Care.com.
Welcome back.
Next week, we'll see Kamala Harris and Donald Trump face off for the first time in the September 10th presidential debate, the same day Biden and Trump were meant to have their final showdown. Early voting also kicked off this week with the first ballots arriving in North Carolina. The Harris Walls campaign has been on the road all week, starting with a union-focused event on Monday, which was Labour Day. Things are looking positive for the Democrats, with a Reuters and Ipsos poll last week showing Harris leading by 4 percentage points. Former White House Global Engagement Director Brett Bruen says she has a huge advantage as the quasi-incumbent.
So she can lean on a lot of both the record, the positions of the Biden-Harris administration, while, deviating and casting some differences on issues like Gaza, where she's saying, no, I take a different stand than the president.
Wednesday saw events take a dramatic turn with US Attorney General Merrick Garland calling a press conference to address election security. Now, the idea that Russia might be trying to interfere in the US presidential election probably won't come as a shock to anyone. However, at least this time, the US Justice Department seems to be taking the idea of election interference more seriously. US Attorney General Merrick Garland has convened an election threat task force, and he announced a series of sanctions for Russia today as a source of election meddling schemes. The Justice Department says a state-backed Russian media outlet has spent up to $10 million through a third party recruiting American online influencers to decimate Russian talking points and disinformation. The news caused shockwaves through the American right-wing media, with podcaster Tim Pool identified as one of those Russia sought to influence. Garland says the investigation is wide-ranging. He also warned about activity from Iran and China and pledged to protect those involved in the US election process from any threats of any kind.
These cases are a warning. If you threaten to harm or kill an election worker or official or volunteer, the Justice Department will find you, and we will hold you accountable.
Germany has become the latest European nation to see a shock rise in votes for the far right. The Alternative for Deutschland, or AfD, won significant victories in 2 states in eastern Germany on Sunday and caused a similar upset to Marine Le Pen's strong showing in the French general election. Chancellor Olaf Scholz described the results as bitter and worrying on Monday as the AfD demanded to be included in coalition negotiations in Saxony and Thuringia. Reacting to the results, Tory peer Robert Hayward said it's alarming to see the far right making gains again in Germany.
It's not just the question of control on immigration. It doesn't make you hard right. It's how you say it, where you go about it. And there's no question that the AfD, certainly in East Germany, have got pretty close to using Nazi slogans.
Sir Ian McKellen has bounced back from his recent traumatic onstage, or rather offstage experience. He slipped and fell from the stage during a performance of Player Kings in London's West End, but the 85-year-old has made a full recovery. He's hoping that he'll get the chance to put back on the robes and beard and play Gandalf in the new Lord of the Rings movies, which are to be directed by Andy Serkis. So retirement is not on his mind, although he says the stage dive was pretty dramatic.
I broke my wrist. I said to myself as I slid off the stage and tripped, this is the end. And apparently I shouted out, my neck is broken, I'm dying. I don't remember saying that.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day.
Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world.
To make switching to the new Boost Mobile risk-free, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Because you have nothing to lose. Boost Mobile is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
No, I asked why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh.
Wouldn't.
Because you love wasting money as a way to punish yourself because your mother never showed you enough love as a child?
Whoa. Easy there.
Yeah.
Applies to online activations. Requires port in and auto pay. Customers activating in stores may be charged non-refundable activation fees.